actually was like calling on, what is a service account? Yeah. Well, I don't know, you and I can read out, but I'm like, that's just the internet. What, did he just say service account? Are you an on-premise person trying to move into Google Cloud? Or you probably have no idea what Google Cloud is all about, especially from a security perspective. Fortunately, at KubeCon Paris, I spoke to Jorge from Xebia, and we spoke about some of the fundamentals. Like we spoke about what's it like to have network identity, compute security, IAM security in a Google Cloud environment. What are some of the elements you need to be aware of? What are some of the organizations doing in terms of scale? And how can you use Terraform and similar languages to scale out security and what some of the challenges in that space are? It was a really interesting conversation at KubeCon Paris. I hope you enjoy this. And if you know someone who's trying to move into the Google Cloud space, this is a great introductory video conversation that we had with Jorge. And I hope you get to share this with your friends as well so they can get to do better Google Cloud security. If you're here for a second, third time, you know the drill. Definitely give us a subscribe and follow if you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn. Give us a review or rating as well if you are listening to this on iTunes and Spotify. We really appreciate the support you've given us all these years and I'll continue to do that so as well. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Google Cloud Security Fundamentals with Jorge from Xebia, and I will see you in the next episode. Peace. Welcome to Cloud Security Podcast. We have Jorge here from Xebia. Could you tell us a bit about yourself? What was your journey into the cloud space?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. So my name is Jorge Liauw-A-Joe. I work at Xebia as a Google Cloud practice lead. Make sure everything's secure, but also as a Google Cloud architect.
Okay.
Really helping customers designing and building secure solutions on Google Cloud. And actually, I really love the cloud, specifically Google Cloud, but I started on-premise.
Oh, actually, maybe that's a good point. What was your journey to go from on-premise to... Because I'm pretty sure we have a lot of people in the audience who are probably are still working on-premise, and I think there's a large community on the internet which has not really migrated onto the cloud yet. So I imagine if you can answer questions for them as well, what's the transition like from on-premise to Google Cloud?
Yeah, actually, so I started all with VMware, having co-locations, like really the hardware. That's really the painful part, looking now back from it, from the cloud perspective. But then I was really looking for solutions like how can we scale it, like really rapidly, right? You can call some hardware provider, hey, I need some more resources, give it to me, you get the proposal, and then 2 weeks later, maybe you have the hardware. You need to provision it, and then maybe down the line you have it in 4 weeks, you're able to use that new power. But yeah, looking at cloud, we can actually start after our podcast. You can start ramping up some workloads. Would it be virtual machines or containers? And that's something I really love, the scale, but also the speed in the way you can set it up. And
do you find that transitioning from on-premise to the Google Cloud world, was there knowledge that you had on-premise that was easier to move into the Google Cloud space?
Well, I think the things on networking and also how the hypervisor layer, that kind of stuff, but also translate things like VLANs, how does it work in the cloud world? So because you already work and know the concept, you just need to translate like how does it work for this cloud specific.
What about also covering things like from a basic layout perspective for people probably watching this because we are talking about Google Cloud Security Fundamentals. What are some of the high-level components that people need to understand about a Google Cloud environment that you think people should be aware of when they're looking at a Google Cloud environment?
I think it all starts first with the structure, right? So how you want to structure your Google Cloud. You have the organization, the folders. Think about non-prod production. And of course your projects where your resources live. I think that's really good to think about that. But besides, you also have the users, right? The whole IAM part. How do you going to connect it? Where do you going to sync the users from? Because what you see a lot when provisioning new users to the cloud, you want to make sure they're in sync. If you talk, for example, about the joiner, mover, leaver, when somebody comes into the company, the accounts are provisioned, they have access, can do all the beautiful stuff. But it's also really important to revoke the access when they leave. So things really start with IAM, and the structure is really important. And I think what's really a good guide also to use is a Google Cloud blueprint. The whole foundation, talking about the hierarchy of how to structure it, but also how to work with the workloads, firewall, default compute accounts, that kind of stuff. That's, I think, is really helpful.
And I'm going to map a few things that people normally consider. For example, from an auditing perspective, like a lot of people care about the fact that, hey, in my on-premise world, I can look at any audit log on the server, whatever. I put that into a central log file, like log aggregator, whatever. What is that in Google Cloud world?
Yeah, I think it was really nice because what you mentioned, for logging, you need to set things up, right? In Google Cloud, it's there by default.
Oh, what's the service called again so people don't know?
You have the log explorer. And of course, you have the audit logs, the data access logs, that kind of stuff. But the cool thing is you don't need to set anything up in order to make that possible.
Just it's already enabled for everyone?
By default, the logging is there. But in the end, if you look at logging on the larger scale, you can actually send the logs to dedicated projects where you have the logs. Think about if, for example, if you remove the project, then you also remove the logs about these projects. So that's why you want to keep it in a central log.
And we mentioned identity, we mentioned logging already. In terms of security fundamentals for Google Cloud, what are some of the things that come to mind in terms of whether it's network security or whether, maybe let's start with network security. We can go peel off layers. Where do you feel? So we spoke about the structure. You have to help lay out structure for organization, folders, projects. Now we've set that up. We have IAM. We've done federation, hopefully.
Let's hope.
That'll be a good one to put that in there. Do I need federation? If I'm just someone who's trying to be like I want to experiment with Google Cloud. Do I need to have federation, or can I just have my own Gmail account, log in?
Yeah, I think if you want to start, for example, use the Google Cloud free tier, then you can just use your Google account to explore it and take it from there. But if you want to connect it on enterprise level with Google Workspace or maybe your Azure domain, then I think that will be the way to go.
And we say after a certain level of maturity, because I'm trying to give a perspective where people get an idea from, hey, you can start at a small scale where you have an organization, folders, projects with 1 or 2 compute services, and you're not doing much. You're like, oh, I'm just going to experiment because I'm not sure if a Google Cloud is the right one for me. You do that for 6 months. You have done auditing as well because you have audit logs, Log Explorer, all of that. And you're trying to move across to, hey, now I can do some more serious projects. In terms of the first one for network security, kind of coming back to that, what are some of the network security components people think about when they are trying to build in Google Cloud?
I think by default, when you create the networks, the VPC networks, then you want to make sure you use the custom ones. Because with the default one, you get certain firewalls that you don't want to have there. So you want to start from there. So you can define what subnets, and from there you can create, of course, you want to do it with Terraform, infrastructure as code, to make sure, what firewalls should be there using the firewall tags, and not all instances are VPC, for example. So I think those are really important. But I think even more important is where to start. Know what you want to deploy, because you mentioned when do you maybe structure differently your Google Cloud. I think it also depends that you are aware what you want to do today, but maybe in the future. So I have an idea on that, to make sure you don't need to reorganize everything along the way. I can imagine what you say, if you're going to experiment, then start small. But I think specifically in startup can go really rapidly crazy. And then people doing things manually, maybe by code, G Cloud.
As people are looking at network security from a VPC perspective, something which is different about other clouds, and I wonder if you can shed some light on that as well. A lot of people go, if I'm in a network, I've got 2 compute instances, my 2 compute engines in one network. Do they automatically talk to each other, or do I have to have a firewall rule to allow them to talk to each other?
By default, they can talk to each other.
So I don't have to have that because they're the same network. Is there the whole region zone concept? How does that work in Google Cloud?
That's a good one, because it's top of my head. But I think you can even go from one network to the other one, even across regions.
Across regions as well.
That's true, right? Because I think that makes Google unique in that sense compared to the other one.
Because I was going to say, because other people have that region. If I have a network in one region, I can't automatically talk to the other. Unless I have some kind of peering or extending going through the internet or whatever. But in Google Cloud, the networks in the same region can communicate through firewall rules?
They can communicate to each other.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And one of the other things, when you come back to networks, one lovely thing, I don't know how it works in the other cloud, like the blue or the yellow one, but the shared VPCs, where you create one network and you can have VPC peerings to other networks, and then you can start to manage all the firewall rules, for example, and the subnets.
It's worthwhile calling out, because a lot of conversation also comes from a cloud native versus, hey, I already have a firewall. Insert company name here. I'm not going to name a company.
I know a few, but
So I already have a firewall in my on-premise. Do I need to migrate that firewall to the Google Cloud as well? Or are there services in Google Cloud that I can use to do that kind of scaled out firewall thing as well?
There are a lot of things. Of course, you have the basic firewall just to protect compute instance. You have the firewall plus tier. That's more, this next gen firewall, actually from Palo Alto, as a managed service. So you can do the heavy lifting for you. But there you have intrusion detection, intrusion protection. And that's pretty cool, because you can fit it in pretty nice and easily within your VPC network. So that's really a cool thing. Things like a proxy server to make sure you can filter the egress proxy. You can set up Squid and all that kind of stuff, manage the instance group. But you can also, again, have the secure web proxy for you. You just define the whitelist, also in Terraform, and you can just provision it. So you can stay control and you know what's going on in your network and what can go outside. And of course, it comes inside with the firewalls.
And maybe adding that to the compute side then. Obviously, you can see where I'm going with this. I've got network. I'm going to talk about compute next. But obviously, we want to talk about scale as well. In a compute security sense, what are some of the considerations people should put in? And because I don't even know what people would understand compute. Does they think it's servers? So what's an example service in Google Cloud which is the same as a server on-premise?
You mean compute engine?
Yeah, compute engine.
Yeah, compute engine, like the virtual machine.
Yeah, virtual machine functions. There's app engine. There's a lot.
Yeah, I would say app engine is back from the days when they started, but you have Cloud Run, GKE, of course. There are Kubernetes. You have the managed Kubernetes, the autopilot.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Yeah, and
What's security for those look like then? Obviously, I understand that we have a hypothetical application we're talking about, so there's application nuances. Outside of the whole application nuances from an infrastructure perspective, what are some of the considerations people could put in?
Yeah, I think, for example, which the focus on the other one serverless, but compute engine, for example, is like the default service account. So actually the permission that the compute instance itself has to communicate within Google Cloud. And normally that's pretty broad, the permission that are there.
Okay.
So I think they're editor. And actually you need to limit it to looking at the least privilege principle. Make sure that you only limit or give the permissions that are needed for certain roles. That also applies for service account, not only for users. So I think that's a really important one to take a look at that. And you see it by most of the service that the default service account for compute is there if you just create it in the normal way.
Actually, what's like calling on? What is a service account? You and I kind of blubbed it out, but I'm like, that's just the internet. Did he just say service account? Because I know there's a service account concept on-premise as well. Whereas a system account, they're like, oh, it's my system manager account. But I'll let you explain what service account is.
For example, in the on-premise world, when I create service account, that's actually when the server itself does authentication or some function. But I would say similar is also in Google Cloud itself, right? When the compute engine runs, it communicates with the metadata servers or something else in Google Cloud or other APIs. That's where you have the compute engine. You needed one at least to make it work. And you need to limit also the permissions and the API scope. So can it, for example, write to cloud storage bucket or only read it within your project? It's really easy as well. But you need to make sure you give it the right attention and the right permissions.
Cool. I loved how we went into identity. We did network compute identity. Let's talk about scaling it as well, where obviously you've worked in this space for some time. What's an example, just to give people a scale of how big environments can be? And where does it scale? Is it more projects? Is it more folders? What does that look like? Multiple organizations? Are there some examples you can share for what Google environments could be at scale? Because a lot of people maybe, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but on-premise, the scale is looked very differently. It's like I work in a data center, the next data center maybe, I don't know, we're in Paris right now. The next data center maybe in Amsterdam or whatever. Like, but there is a separate person for that. They look after all of that. I'm not looking after all of that. Whereas I feel in the cloud world, that's been generalized quite a bit. I'm the one responsible for the Paris data center, the Amsterdam data center, the London one, because I'm like suddenly, because it's all software. I'll be curious to hear some examples on what do you see at scale people do with Google Cloud.
What you mostly, of course, when they start off with the hierarchy, where you have the organization, the prod, the non-prod. And there you mostly 4 different departments that have their own folders with the projects there. But looking at scale, we have customers that have more than 10,000 VMs, for example. More like steady workloads, but also with ephemeral workloads that they, for example, destroy them after a few hours, but also scale up from 1 to 5,000. And normally it will be a sweat, right, for the system admin. But you just put it in Terraform and you're able to do this.
And maybe because you mentioned Terraform as well, because I think a lot of people talk about automation. What does that look like at scale? Now we've set the foundation for, okay, we know networking, compute, identity, org as well. How much of this can be automated and how would you go about doing this?
You can automate, of course, a lot, but first things you need to start with bootstrapping the whole project where you can from there have a template and start all your other projects. But what I really love, like one of the most beautiful setup that I've seen at customers while we worked on from Xebia, is where, for example, if you go to the GUI, you only have read access. Hey, what to do, man? As a DevOps engineer, you want to do something, you want to do the nice stuff. But then that you actually, the only things that you can do if you need to provision or edit some resources or other stuff, they need to go through Terraform. They need to create a merge request and edit the code and then push it back. And then, for example, if you have Slack or some other communication, you just put it there, post, hey, this is my merge request, can you check it, validate it? So other guys can also look at it, say, okay, this is valid, this is secure, and then you push it through and then it will be provisioned through the pipeline. That's actually, I think, the most beautiful one. But maybe you think, what if you have incidents, right? Do we go then into the Terraform and try to do this stuff? I think that will be a bit harder. But then we have the break glass procedures. Now in Google, you have the PAM, the Privileged Access Manager. It's in preview currently. Where you can request certain access rights for a certain amount of time. That will be revoked.
Just to almost go down the Terraform path a bit more, with the whole idea of scaling, can we scale account creation? Can we scale? Because there's obviously there are limits in other clouds for how much you can scale automatically. Like, for example, there's steps that have to be done manually. There is no automation for that. Is there so just to give an example of people, they can create Google accounts, they can create folders, they can create orgs, they can create
compute instance works.
To I mean, obviously the limit is like where you stop thinking as the learn limit.
Yeah, and always what I try to look also in the Terraform registry, like what services being supported natively in the provider. Because what you most see with new services being released by Google, not always there's a Terraform provider. I know people who might create it or add some good stuff.
So you can add some as well. That's a good thing. You can. So if you wanted one and for some reason Google Cloud is not doing it, you can actually add your own provider as well.
Yeah, but you also, for example, the Magic module, for me, like really looking, okay, what's being supported, and then from there take it along. And sometimes also for me, there are ways that I need to go the path of doing it more manually through the GUI or using G-Cloud commands because the service is just new, it's not being supported already, but it's just a way to do POCs. But in the end, you want to make sure it's ready for production. And then it is there you need to have it in Terraform code, I would say.
Interesting. Do you find that, like some of the people we were talking to, they have massive centralization project, for lack of a better word. They're making the cloud platform. Hey, we're going to use a HashiCorp Vault, and that could be a central secret management vault for all of it. They might say, Terraform is our standard language for infrastructure platform building or whatever. Is that something you see quite often in Google Cloud as well, where after a point, instead of asking a business unit to create an account themselves, you're building a platform team that uses Terraform to create an entire fleet of accounts for that business unit or something.
Yeah, or you also see that the teams are able to create it themselves for IAM or the project in order to bootstrap it.
Yeah.
But then you see that the merge request, for example, they need to throw it into the platform team and they're able to approve it. But then from there on, the pipeline will do it for them in order to scale it.
Okay. Yeah. And you can still use Terraform for most of it in as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I only use Terraform, nothing else. I know there are other products, right? There may be like wrappers around Terraform, but I think it's good to stay with the original product.
Yeah, fair.
That's for me, and I also know a lot of guys there do a lot of great work.
Yeah.
But I know there's more in the market, of course.
The next question that I have is, and in terms of people who are building on Google Cloud, a lot of the other cloud providers, they themselves have a bit of security gaps in terms of, hey, not everything is solved cloud natively. We spoke about the fact that there is already firewall capability. There are other security products as well. What are some of the common security products that you see people use from Google Cloud? And where do you see gaps that people need to fill with a third party? That we've always done that in on-premise. I just want to make sure people don't understand that, hey, it's not that everything is solved by cloud.
No, exactly.
So worthwhile starting off with, what are some of the common security services you hear about or people use? And what are some of the gaps that are there need to be filled up?
Let's first start with the common security service that you see in Google Cloud that I see customers use a lot. First of all, take Security Command Center Premium. This one gives you a single pane of glass that you can see about misconfiguration, compliancy, vulnerabilities in your environment, and also how you stack up to benchmark like SIS from the hardening perspective. So that also gives you insight, okay, where do I need to take action to make sure that the workload stays secure? I think that's one of the great one. Cloud Armor, that's actually the web application firewall. Will protect you against DDoS attacks and, of course, other attacks from the network. Cloud IDS, maybe not a lot of people use it, but I really love it because you can actually do packet mirroring. Back in the days, you need to mirror a port on your switch on the on-premise. They can send it to the instance, then managed by Google, and you can see is there malicious activity. But there's actually more is there malicious activity between pods or VMs. And you can say, okay, what's happening there? Do you need to do something? So that was really cool. We have the next-gen Firewall Plus tier with the IDS, but also intrusion protection. And since it's in line in the traffic, that one's really great one because that's hard to scale. For example, if it wouldn't scale your own solution, you will lose network traffic coming from the outside or inside. So I think those are pretty cool. And one of I love, it's not really network security, is organizational policy constraints. Where you can set some constraints, like these are the guidelines, like where to deploy it, how can you handle a service account, are you able to deploy in Paris or just in Groningen?
Also, every policy, there are policies for that.
That applies to a new resource that you deploy, and then you can stop them if they're not complying. That's pretty cool.
And what are some of the gaps that exist where you find that people normally end up going on the third-party path?
Good one. I know the question with him. No, like for example, in the pipeline, we use different solutions from Sneak or Fuke previously. We also have Aquasec, that kind of stuff in the pipeline. For example, that you want to scan the Terraform plan. Are there misconfiguration violations? Mostly see that they have like basic rules, but you can create custom rules depending on the business that you run. But you can scan it, you can inform in the merge request, the end user, the developer, hey, are you on track? And otherwise you can also block it. So that's pretty cool, but that's where we see that we don't use Google products, but then a third party. So I think that's really important one. And the other one is, for example, for the old school antivirus or the endpoint detection response.
I thought it's a firmware. We don't need antivirus. It's not even there anymore.
And it's still there, yeah.
As you were talking about it, just shut down right there. I'm like, no idea. People still ask for antivirus, I imagine.
Yeah, and because Google doesn't have it in their portfolio, they have the cool things, right? This mentioned security commands, but also the SIEM solution Chronicle, but they don't have the antivirus. For me, it would be maybe that's a good decision to maybe add somewhere down the line. But now we see customers that they use third party for there.
Do you see people use Chronicle quite a bit?
I see more people using it, and I really love it because, of course, it's the SIEM side, where we have all the insights and the correlation with security threats, making sure that we can see where, for example, indicators of compromise within the systems that they have. Not only cloud, but also on-premise, so that's pretty cool. But there's also the source side, where you can actually automate it from simply creating tickets in Jira, you don't want to do it manually, but also isolating endpoints that are, for example, infected. And that's pretty cool, because there you can really automate more and let the cloud work for you, and really make sure you can scale, actually.
Interesting. And is there anything for data leakage, by any chance?
There's a data loss prevention.
Yeah,
there's a DLP, and you now also have some new info types. That's actually like what kind of category data, think about GDPR or personal identifiable information, PI data, but also now secrets and that kind of stuff.
Also, it can help with that.
Yeah, exactly.
So is that Chronicle or is that another product?
No, the DLP is part of Google Cloud itself.
Okay, right.
It's not directly in.
Maybe premium supporting it.
You always get premium support.
Yeah, premium support.
As long as you pay.
Yeah, as long as you pay, we'll give you.
It's always included, right?
But thankfully, Terraform is free for people to use it. It keeps scaling.
Yeah, that's for free.
Yeah. So I think at least it was worthwhile for people who are scaling out. Are you like a Terraform Cloud user or Terraform HashiCorp?
Actually, I use the Terraform Cloud.
Cool. I definitely have been leaning more in that direction. I think I did a whole video on, we had an AWS account, and unfortunately we had the Terraform keys left on the internet. So should have just gone to the Terraform Cloud instead of doing Terraform on-premise. But hey, that's a story for another time. People should watch
Key management. Watch where you store your keys. That's one thing.
That's pretty much it. But thanks so much for coming. Where can people connect with you, find you on the internet?
You can connect me on LinkedIn, Jorge Liauw-A-Joe. Maybe you can put it in the comments.
I would put that
But let's connect up. And if you have any cool challenge or you want to have some thoughts, ideas on security, let me know.
How to scale using HashiCorp as well. You can talk about that as well.
Yeah, HashiCorp, scale your security on Google Cloud. And you know where to find me.
Yeah. I'll put that in the Dude, thanks so much for coming.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much.
That.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in the next video. Thank you for listening or watching this episode of Cloud Security Podcast. We have been running for the past 5 years, so I'm sure we haven't covered everything cloud security yet. And if there's a particular cloud security topic that we can cover for you in an interview format on Cloud Security Podcast, or make a training video on tutorials on Cloud Security Bootcamp, definitely reach out to us on info@cloudsecuritypodcast.tv. By the way, if you're interested in AI and cybersecurity, as many cybersecurity leaders are, you might be interested in our sister AI Cybersecurity podcast, which I run with former CSO of Robinhood, Caleb Seamer, where we talk about everything AI and cybersecurity. How can organizations deal with cybersecurity on AI systems, AI platforms, whatever AI has to bring next as the evolution of ChatGPT and everything else continues. If you have any other suggestions, definitely drop them on info@cloudsecuritypodcast.tv. I'll drop that in the description and the show notes as well, so you can reach out to us easily. Otherwise, I will see you in the next episode. Peace.